Well, hello and welcome everybody to the Smite Club team videocast number 3. I'm Matt. It's my pleasure again today to welcome two of our team members. We have here Aaron Weisman. Say hi.
What's up?
And
What's up?
Daniel Olivas, who's here with us. Dan, say hi.
Hello. Howdy, everybody.
Awesome. And today we're going to be recapping the team's trip to the Hammerhead Major in Sacramento, California. And this was actually almost 2 weeks ago now, because with 4th of July and the holiday weekend, we didn't have a chance to get together and talk about it. But Dan and Aaron went out to Sacramento and played along with a couple of other of our team members, and they both ended up doing very well over the weekend. So Aaron got 11th, and Dan ended up with 4th place with what most people consider to be a fairly weak and underpowered faction. So if both of you just want to take a moment, kind of tell us really quick in general, what did you take and kind of what, 30,000 foot overview of what your experiences were like for the weekend.
Okay.
Aaron, why don't you go? Yep.
All right. So I took Dark Angels. I've been toying with the list. I think there's some things I liked about this variation, some things I didn't. So it starts with a Dark Angels Raven Wing detachment. I've got 2 Talon Masters, one with Arbiter's Gaze. Then in my elite slot, I got the Raven Wing Apothecary. He is Selfless Healer, and he's got the Reliquary of the Repentant, which was pretty sweet. It's a relic of lower your invuln to a 5-up. Pretty cool. Then I've got 3 attack bikes, each with multi-meltas, and a 2 bikes, and 1 bike, so coming together for 5 attack bikes. Then I've got a Dark Angels Deathwing Vanguard detachment, where Azrael's my warlord with Brilliant Strategist. And I've got Ezekiel, he knows Mindworm, Trepidation, and Engulfing Fear. And I've got a Blade Guard Ancient with Pennant of Remembrance and Rites of War. I've got a Deathwing Command Squad with one guy with a Thunderhammer Storm Shield, one with a pair of Lightning Claws. I've got a Deathwing Terminator Squad, 5 Thunderhammer Storm Shield, 4 pairs of Lightning Claws, and one guy with a Cyclone Missile Launcher Chain Fist Stormbolter. Then finishing out, I've got a 10-man Relic Terminator Squad, 9 Lightning Claw Combi Bolters. Sergeant had a Chain Fist Combi Bolter.
So what's different from this and your Dark Angels list that you were taking just like a couple of weeks ago?
So I changed the psychic powers on Ezekiel to his new ones are Mindworm, Trepidation, and Engulfing Fear. He originally knew Aversion, and I found that just never mattered. Too many rerolls in the game now for -1 to hit to really be relevant. He also reduces attacks or things in close combat within 6 inches of him. But if I really wanted to do that, I could just do what's it called? Stratagem Line Unbreakable. So only the first rank attacks usually would be the only time I would do that. So then I reduced attacks that way and didn't need that power. So usually I found myself wanting Mortal Wounds. So Trepanation's just basically another smite. I didn't bring on my Pennant of Remembrance guy. He usually carries the Warlord trait of just deny 1 psychic power for no reason. Pretty much just that doesn't go off. I found I wasn't playing a lot of Psychers in 9th edition, so I changed it to Rites of War, which ended up being completely irrelevant. So that's probably going right back out and going right back to Watched for the denied psychic power. And I changed the attack bikes to a 2-2-1 rather than a 3-1-1 because with the points increases, it then meant my to the last or while we stand we fight target went on the 3-man attack bike, which is one of the units that usually dies. So that wasn't worth it to me anymore because I usually take to the last a lot. What else did I change? And then I put a Chain Fist on my Relic Terminator Sergeant. I'm probably going to drop him back down to a Lightning Claw, and then I'm just going to put the Teleport Homer on the Deathwing squad. And then in the Deathwing squad, I was able to put a Missile Launcher in. A lot of it was from the points changes from the chapter approved I had to play with. But I like the Missile Launcher. Just more D6 damage was useful throughout the event. It's pretty good. And then when I stationed Horde, when I played Necrons, the Frag Missile Launcher was super useful when I was playing Death Guard. Having the Frag Missiles to deal with Poxwalkers was pretty useful.
So okay, go ahead.
So I like the Cyclone Missile Launcher. I would like to try to fit another one in, but I have to play with points more. I don't know how that would work out, but yeah, we'll have to see.
Real quick then, how did your, you don't need to go into details with everyone, but real quick, how did your games go over the weekend?
It's pretty good. Dark Angels did what Dark Angels do. They just kind of tank. People just dump all their shooting in and then kill 3 Terminators. It's fun that way. So yeah, then I just get my points, go to the objectives, usually just try to get on 2 or 3, depending on what the mission is, get the 10, 10, 10 for the first 3, and then go for the 15 on the final turn when I've worn down my opponent. So I'll get 45, then just get all my secondaries. While we stand, we fight. Stubborn Defiance, usually good for 25 to 30 points. And then whatever the third one is, I'll figure out. But yeah, so it's just a lot of outlasting opponents. I have to figure out the AdMech matchup. I played Adrian Phillips, the eventual winner, round 2, and he's the first person I think to be able to quickly remove all my Terminators. So I got to play with that matchup a little bit. So
go into a little bit more detail on that one because I think a lot of people watching are going to know Adrian and AdMech, right? The big what's here, the big dog right now. So how did that play out more specific?
So Adrian Phillips, he's from Tabletop Titans, a channel a lot of people are familiar with in the 40K community. So he went first turn one, and he was able to like super buff a Vanguard unit, and he used the what's it called? The redeploy relic Rainment or the Techno Martyr or something. I think
Solar
it's called. Or Solar Flare, yeah, that's it. Raymond something else. So he solar flared like a Vanguard unit, like over to another objective. It was a six. So to say it was a 6 objective Dawn of War mission, which is not the greatest for my Dark Angels. Because so in Dawn of War, I usually have to take 2 objectives, like the one in the middle and one corner, and kind of like crowd around that corner and then figure out how to get to the other objective. Hindsight, I probably should have put the single attack bike on that objective, like over hiding.
Aaron, we lost you there. I'm not sure what's up, Aaron, but your internet connection not that great.
Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, how much did you get?
We lost about the last 20 seconds.
All right. So that's thing I could probably put the single attack bike hiding over in that area just to deny the deep strike. It's probably something I'll do in the future for that. I didn't really consider that play, but it was a good one. So he super buffed it, dropped him down, and then picked off a bunch of Terminators. Then he moved everything forward. My turn, I was able to kill a lot of his infiltrators, whatnot. Then turn 2, all his small guns came in range, and then I had to make 200 saves or something stupid. Went good for a while, but he eventually just started wearing down my Terminators till they were ineffective numbers, really. Then even if I brought them back, they still never got back to a decent strength to actually do anything. So I just had to try to get all the points I could. So it wasn't, but he just eventually was able to wear it up the Terminator. So I got to figure out that matchup a little more.
What do you think are your potential paths forward? Game, what might?
So the big issue for that matchup is I need to deal with the ability to ignore AP1 and AP2. A lot of my shooting is AP1 in that list. A lot of the mass shooting. So usually my Terminators are -1, my Talon Masters are -1 or -2. So he was able to make a lot of saves because of the Lucius +1 to save. So it really wasn't affecting him at all. And then a number of other things. He got up to 2-up armor on a lot of occasions. So I got to find some AP3 in the list. Maybe I had to figure out Plasma Scepters in the list. I'll have to play with that variation. But yeah, so that's my big.
So I guess my question is then, you don't think that there are just play differences that you could do to turn that into a winnable? You're back to the level of redesigning your list, compete with them.
I'm considering play differences, but he was able to keep range, so my Terminators need to charge to be able to do anything super effective. When the Terminators got into him, they started killing things, but he was able to weather my shooting a little more than is normal, just with the Lucius +1 to save and all the buffs to it. So my shooting, which is honestly a large portion of my list, didn't actually matter that much, which was a little difficult to deal with to that. So I got to figure out a few things to deal with it.
Interesting. Okay. What was your other most difficult or most interesting matchup over the week?
So I played a Tyranids player, and so my Terminators were able to eventually kill everything, but he was able to just crack in, advance everything in front of me, so I couldn't move. So I had slow movement. So I tried to do all my movement in my pile and fight phase. Eventually got me ready to go, but it kept me on 2 objectives when I needed to be getting 3 in that mission. I believe it was a hold 2 mission. So, or a hold 2, hold 3 mission. So I was only getting 5 points when I needed to be getting 10. So if it were just a hold 1, hold 2, I would have been fine. but I had to get creative to try to get the third, and then I was able to get it. Then he'd take me off of it, and I had to sacrifice some Talon Masters to keep the score close. He eventually was able to pull it out. So normally, I don't think that's a difficult, or I shouldn't say I don't think it's a difficult matchup. I think it's a winnable matchup, but I have to figure out how to deal with him walling me in so I can't get to the third objective on hold 2, hold 3 missions.
So it's funny that you say that, because a few weeks ago, after you and I played on the stream with your white, talking about how you would have rather played with Dark Angel, and I said that would have been my exact strategy, and you didn't think that it would work.
So I don't think it would work on a hold 1, hold 2 mission. The hold 2, hold 3 was the big monkey wrench.
What was the points mark?
I think I lost by like 10. It was like
I mean, probably not, but did the hold 2 make it harder for him as well? Like, would he have gone up in primary point if it was the hold 2?
So he was trying to turn it into a Vanguard. Like, he would try to take the 3 on his. So he was trying to take the 3 on the Dawn of War, like across his board edge, and then the one in the corner. I was able to deny the 4th objective, but because I was stuck on 2, he would be able to like hold 3, and then he'd still hold more.
So from your point of view, then, just an extra 5 points over a few turns, right, would have been the difference.
Yes, because then he wouldn't have been holding more is the big issue. Like, I'd be giving up like 3, I'm giving up 10, but if I'm holding 2 and he's getting 3, then he's getting 15.
I missed that. I didn't understand what you say there. So if it's a hold 1, hold 2 mission, I understand that you pick up 5 extra points a turn. But it would be probably 10 to 15 instead of like 5 to 15.
Yeah.
But it still would seem like it would be 15 for the Tyranid most turn.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I just misheard you. Well, we've kind of talked about this already. Is AdMech the only reason that you're gonna redesign the list after the tournament? Did you learn other things, other matchups? Have you thinking of changing things in the future?
Yeah, it's getting walled in is an issue I need to figure out. Like, I didn't like a list that does that isn't super common. Maybe with orcs, I'll have to figure that.
We lost you again. And we're just going to boot you. All right. Well, Aaron, we'll come back to you if you're. We were nearing. So let's hop on over to Dan. So Dan did extremely well at the tournament over the weekend, right? Again, with what I think most people would consider to be one of the secret factions game. So I mean,
everyone, sure,
everyone, yeah. So, just walk us through what was in your list, kind of what your overall strategy was. How did you think you were going in?
Sure. So I've had a problem in ninth with getting bored in these games, running craft worlds, because there's just not a lot of plays, and I think ninth really punishes dynamic play. Like, if you're in ninth, if you're confronted with an A/B situation, the boring play is the right play. It just punishes any sort of like risk taking or whatever. So I was getting bored running my normal craft world, like fast bounce around lists. Like midway through the second game of a day, I just get bored because it just felt like I already played this game 2 times, right? So initially I thought about running an entire Wraith list. And I put together a list that was all Wraiths, Wraith Lords, and Wraith Seers. And then when I was mocking the games on paper, I realized I couldn't score more than like 70 points a game, even if I 45 the primary, because I just wouldn't be able to score any secondaries. So that didn't work. So I had to come up with what I eventually did, which was one unit or one detachment, which was a Wrath of the Dead Expert Crafters detachment, which essentially was just a Wraith Seer and 5 Wraith Blades with Shield Axe. And then obviously I had Storm Guardians for the obligatory troop choice, and then the 2 Yanari characters acting against the HQ choices there, mostly because the Incarn's fun to play with, as opposed to being boring to play with, which, you know, I know it still punishes jumping and stuff, but it's fun for me. And then I took as my other detachment battalion, sort of a more standard Craft Worlds battalion with a Reaper brick in it, and then obviously the 3 casters, the Footseer and a Farseer on bike, a Warlock on bike, and then just a little support in the form of a couple of Wave Serpents, and then again the troops. I think 2 Rangers and a Dire Avenger unit, which I bumped up in numbers a little bit, just because I found that they weren't doing much anyway other than actions and trying to hold objectives, so the extra numbers would help for character protection. So sort of born out of a desire to play something that would be more fun, where my 2 choices, even the boring choice, wouldn't be super boring. And so that's what I took. So my expectations were, I thought, you know, for me, the floor at a 6-round event should always be 4-2. Thought there was a real possibility of me going 3-3, honestly. Just because it's so underpowered. Like every other book does what every one of my units does well. It does better and cheaper, right? Like everyone has a better and cheaper option for every unit I have, with the exception of maybe the Reapers, only because of Fire and Fade until that starts costing 2 CP. But even that in the current meta isn't that strong unless you're Fire and Fading back into a Wave Serpent, and everyone can pop Wave Serpents now. So it's not as strong as it used to be. So there's really no grand tricks. You know, where I dropped the Shining Spears were a fun tool before, because you could buff them up, make them reasonably tough to kill, and then they bounce around and were annoying. The Wraith Blades on foot sort of took that role, slower but harder to kill, more points efficient, and just generally a nuisance, and you can heal them. It never came up in this tournament because it's so expensive, but you can spend the 2 CP to get D3 wounds back for them. So if you had 1 on 1 wound, you can potentially get them full. But then when they're fully buffed up, having a 2-up, 3-up, and then a 5-up Feel No Pain is really strong. And being T6 means T6 is a weird sweet spot. A lot of people can still make themselves wound you on 2s, which is annoying. But you make them earn it, right? And they're shooting at Wraith Blades, and you're like, you don't care if they die. So it was interesting. It was fun. The Wraith Seer really performed well. He was coming out of Ghost Walk, or he'd come off of Strategic Reserves, and I'd either Ghost Walk him or Ghost Walk the Wraith Blades for the 7-inch charge out of Deep Strike, or whatever the Wraith Blades would need to make. And that was an interesting, fun combo. And it's cinematic, right? The Wraith Seer walking around with the Wraith Blades, I thought was pretty, like, in my head, you know, it's a cinematic thing. He's like taking care of his little brothers. So it was a fun list. I was hoping, you know, I thought my, 5-1 I would be really happy with. It turns out I'm not happy with 5-1. But I
Can't
had
do
fun.
much better than, like, only one person does better than 5.
Well, sure. Well, sure. But I could have been, I could have scored more points maybe and finished higher. You know what I mean? Out of the 5-1s, again, having a bad book and no secondaries hurts me. The 2 secondaries I can take cap at 12 points. So, and then I have a bad third. So it makes it a little tough. But my game 3 against Jake Nelson, he's running Mechanicus. That was like my low scoring game. I think between the two of us, we scored 39 points in secondaries combined. That was a product of a fatigue day. The AC actually went out in the main store, and I played all my games in the 2 rooms that didn't have AC. And so day 3, it's weird up in Arizona, right? It wasn't the heat, it was the humidity. I just had no minerals left in my body. And we played one of the sloppiest games I've ever played in my life. And I think I actually got pretty lucky against Mechanicus because they're so strong. And ended up pulling that out by the hair, just by the smallest of margins. But that game alone, just playing better in that game and remembering that was the mission where you can leave the objectives. We both forgot that you could leave them and still hold them. And we both chose poor secondaries, given that was the case. And then, I made mistakes at the end. I had 2 more chances to max out my my rod, and I just didn't for no reason, basically. And those points, I can't remember the exact score, but had I scored 10 more points in that game, I think I'm in the running for 2nd place. But again, against guys that have real books that can just get 45 secondary points every game. It makes it tough when you're running craft worlds. So, and that's the main problem. It's not even just that my units are underpowered out of the craft worlds book. It's not even just that everyone else gets a better version. It's the fact that I don't have secondaries to score 45 points. It's almost impossible.
Yeah, that's a game design thing that I've never personally cared, right? Like giving alternative winning mechanism in the game is like so impossible. I don't know if you've played like a lot of board games, like one character would have secret agenda or something, an individual win condition, win the game. They're
Right.
they're never fair. They're never even, right? And tournament oriented game, right? Giving somebody extra secondary, or faction specific second. That's exactly what it is. Win for that army, and they're just impossible to balance.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I wish, I wish there was like you said, a better way to balance. I guess when everybody has their books, we'll see, right? And is it going to be a situation where most people can score 40 or 45 points in secondaries every game? Then I guess that's as balanced as you're going to get. But honestly, the truth is, like, no one forces me to play Craft Worlds, right? I play it because I love my models. I could build and paint a Space Marines army or a Mechanicus army or whatever fairly quickly if all I cared about was winning. But for me, aesthetics matter, and I like how much time and effort I put into my Craft Worlds army, so I'm going to keep running it. Like I'm painting a Dark Eldar army right now that I'll play when it's pretty, because I don't like playing with ugly stuff. Not everybody's that way, and it's a tournament, right? So there was nothing stopping me from running Mechanicus or Sisters, and
Sure.
then having those.
But it's just as far as health of the game. Right.
No, yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think it's not as punishing at the upper tables because guys who have, maybe more experience or more skill, I think they find a way, right? You find a way to disrupt your opponent's plans. And what I found is some of those armies that I'm just counting on 15, 15, 15. If you can bump even one secondary for a turn, it tilts them really bad because they're counting on that 15. So if you can knock one of their gimme secondaries off for even a turn, you can tilt the player and then put yourself in a position to be successful. So it's interesting, and maybe that doesn't work on the tippy top tier guys because they go, oh well, now I'm going to score 40 instead of 45 or whatever. But that certainly was the case in a couple of my games where I was punching above my weight, where things that they took for granted I was able to take away even briefly and make them change their plan. And a lot of times, even with a good player, if you force them to change their plan, that's where mistakes can happen, and they open up mistakes, and then you can capitalize on that. The game I lost against Salamander's player, really nice guy. We had a pretty good game. Again, we're in the sweat box, so we're both sweating all over our models. But that game was he had that game there's no way I should have been in that game. So I did 22 mortal wounds to myself in my first two psychic phases. And I think a total of 10 mortal wounds to him in my first two psychic phases. And I lost that game 85-80, but I was able to take away a couple of his gimmies, and it tilted him just enough for him to make a mistake on the Incarn at one point. I don't know how much the heat had to do with that and the sweating, but certainly if you let someone just run their game plan, they're probably going to be pretty comfortable. They're going to make all the right plays. If you can throw even a slight little wrench into their game plan, it opens opportunity to make mistakes. And I was able to kind of claw back in that game, because I think I kind of dented his plan. Like he just taken for granted, I'm going to get this, this, and this. And it was nothing major. He wasn't sloppy. I just applied just enough pressure, I think, for him to make a couple of minor mistakes that allowed me to climb back in the game a little bit. But, that should have been, he probably should have won that game 90-60 or 70. You know what I mean?
Is that the Salamanders player who got second place? Or third?
Yeah,
third?
I think he finished in third. Yeah, he got hopped. He was the guy he was the other undefeated. So I played him round 5. And so he went on to play Adrian in round 6. Yeah. So, and that was like I said, it was a very, very even game. Tactically, I felt like it was pretty even. The one advantage of running craft worlds being that people don't know what your plan is because you don't have a plan, right? Like my plan is fluid because I don't have those win conditions built into my list, right? I don't have the secondaries where you know what I'm going to do. So it was, harder on my opponents in that regard, especially top tier players who probably didn't spend 1 second thinking about playing against Craft Worlds, because why would you? So it was, like specifically that game was one of adjustments from both of us. And he played essentially a flawless game until I think turn 4. And that's where I had kind of done some things he didn't expect, was able to open up a little bit of not an opportunity to win, but certainly an opportunity to close the score. And then he made the one mistake with targeting. His target order was off. He allowed the Incarn to jump instead of killing the Incarn. And then, the Incarn was able to kind of go on and secure the 15-point turn 5 for me, bottom of turn 5, which is what brought the score to within 5. Without that 15-point, turn, I would have been in a lot of trouble. So, like I said, it wasn't that, I'm a great player and he's a bad player. It was that he played really well, but made a couple of small mistakes. I also made mistakes. But his plan kind of kept going forward, even in the face of mistakes or, crazy freaking warlocks exploding all over the place. That didn't affect his plan any. So my mistakes really didn't affect his plan. But when he made mistakes, I was able to affect his plan a little bit. Or by affecting his plan, maybe cause some of those minor mistakes to be made. So
this is an interesting kind of question to have for you. So most of the time, so people don't think about playing craft anymore because it's not on data. Right. They're not building for it, not practicing. And normally that would be a huge advantage for the off-meta army. But with your craft world specifically, a lot of the units that I would see in the army are the same units that I would have played against all of 8th edition. And so, like, if I see a big block of Reaper, I see a fairly similar set, psychic character, and especially the version of the list we're running before with Shining Spear. Like, those are all the same things that I would have been practicing attacking against an 8th edition. So, to what extent do people have they just forgotten how to play against? Are those skills, do they atrophy, or what are your thoughts?
I think people forget because if you're getting practice games in, you're obviously going to remember the most about the practice games you've done recently. So I think if you're a serious tournament player and you're gearing up for a major or a GT, you're going to try to get practice games in against equal levels of competition and against the armies you expect to see. But the big thing about the way Craftworld works in 9th versus 8th is you assume that the Craftworld player is still going to make all those plays that he made in 8th because they worked in 8th. They don't work in 9th. So if I play my Craftworlds like I did in 8th, all I do is lose, right? All I do is just lose faster and give up more points and make the game easier for you. So even if you remember how to play against Reaper Brick, for example, Fire and Fade, he's going to get behind this corner and I got to try to neutralize that. And you got to make that decision. Do I try to go for the Reaper Brick or do I just ignore it and let it do what it's going to do? That's the old way to play against it. But in 9th, that's not the way to play against it, because what you need to do is, for example, think about, okay, what can they get to? What objective can they take me off? What objective can they not take me off of? And play that way. So it's a little bit of, if you remember how to play against them in 8th, that's actually not doing you a lot of good, because it's not how I'm going to play them in 9th, right? Just because you put your juicy target up front, if it's not scoring for you, why would I waste the Reaper Brick on it, right? There's no reason for me. So in past editions, you might like buff up your Terminators or whatever, send them up the middle and be like, okay, well, I'm either going to get there or he's going to waste 2 turns of his Reaper Brick on those things. I'm not going to waste any turns on my Reaper Brick on them. I'm going to take you off an objective. I'm going to feed you Storm Guardians for your big Terminate Brick or whatever, whatever's coming at me. So it plays differently. But I think the big thing is, and what I saw mostly was people just going, oh, you're playing Craft Worlds, or you're just a hobby guy then, right? You're just a dumb idiot fluff guy. And some of that might be, COVID and maybe that's my own ego. I think people know I'm a better player than that, but maybe they don't, right?
People who know you.
Sure, yeah, and maybe there's no reason. People looked at the tournament roster and they went, "Oh, this guy's playing Craft Worlds. This guy's terrible, right? Like, I hope I get him round 1 or whatever." That I couldn't tell you, but I did get it. Like, from the guys I didn't play, the guys I played all were great, and I didn't have any issues. I didn't have the rules questions that went to the TOs were all like, good natured and both, I think, situations for, at least for me, where I felt like both of us really thought we were right. I thought I was right. He thought he was right. Well, let's call it TO and let's figure it out. Because it's important. I rolled some off that weren't very important, and then things that were very important. We got a TO involved, and so it was the guys that were coming up like, "Whoa, how are you 3-0? How are you 4-0? How are you 5-1?" Those guys didn't get it. You know what I mean? If it was like the friends of the people I was playing, because they looked at my list and just went, "Well, how do you even do anything with this list?" That was particularly true round 6 because a lot of people were kind of coming around looking at what the top tables were doing. And my round 6 opponent, who was one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life, and a guy I wish I lived close to because I think he would be super cool to hang out with and be friends with. He had a particularly bad game against me in part because he couldn't make any saves with his Custodes army. And if you don't make saves with Custodes, you're gonna have a bad day. But his friends, he's a local guy, and people kept coming up and they were like, I think expecting to see him just dominating me, and they were seeing the opposite. And I think a lot of them were like, well, this can't be possible. What's going on? So, it's hard to say because you can't climb in other people's heads what their motivations are or what they think. But I definitely got the feeling that the people that weren't the people I was playing. So the 6 people I played all really understood, I think, even from early in the games, the level of play they were in. But it was people coming by and watching that were just amazed that Craft Worlds could do anything. And I think that's an attitude, right? I think if you polled every person that has gone to a tournament this year, and you said, hey, you could play against this one army, to guarantee a win, you'd get a lot of Genestealer Cult and you get a lot of Craft Worlds, right? You might even get more Craft Worlds than Genestealer Cult. So I think that's everybody's attitude.
I think it is. And it goes into, this ever back and forth discussion. How much half of the hobby, I think, having that discussion. I since knowing you, Dan, you have shifted my perspective way more to the that I used to be really hardcore in the camp that, if you have 2 people that are roughly equivalent in skill and one army is 10% just mathematically 10% better, well, then barring crazy thing in the dice, 10% better army win like almost all the time. And
Sure.
and maybe that is true, but what I have come to more appreciate is that, rarely are people actually right or
Right.
or maybe I don't know, maybe the discrepancies in the armies aren't as drastic as I thought they were. I don't know. I've softened on that point mostly from hanging with you.
Well, I'll say, like, if I was playing myself, right, then the army would matter, right? Craft Worlds would never beat Mechanicus, and we play 1,000 times, but you're never playing yourself, right? And I think sometimes we give our opponents too little credit for their creativity and too little blame for their lack of creativity. And the thing about having an overpowered army, however you define that, right? Whether you think it's your army's too cheap, or it's got too many mechanics, or it's got both, or it's got better secondaries, is that you can fall into the trap of believing your own hype, right? And when you do that, again, and I can't stress this enough, it's still 2 people playing. If I can throw even the slightest little kink into your plan, a lot of guys have never considered that, right? So you could be 100 times better player than me, and your plan could be 1 through 50. You know exactly what you're going to do. If I throw a 3.5 in between 3 and 4, and you try to go to 4 still, right? Because that's what you always do. It's not going to work. And I think that's where a lot of the really good players separate themselves. Is that they're, the guys that are taking this super seriously, they're playing hundreds of practice games. They don't have one plan, right? They have if something goes wrong at step 5, then this is what I do. If something goes wrong at step 6, I mean, you watch like Richard Siegler or John Lennon play, it's clear that they've sort of planned out for at least every eventuality that they think they can run into. And on stream, they're very good at that. So I think you're right in that player skill matters a lot more than people think. But I think it's also that when someone gets a shiny new toy and they see it just wreck, if it even just wrecks less than they thought it should, it can really hamper them mentally. And, I think being versatile in your thinking is super important in this game because it's a dice game, because you never know what's going to happen with the dice, right? So even taking advantage of those situations where the dice skew for even a couple of attack sequences, you can really throw your opponent off, and then you can pile on, right? And I think that's what I do well as a player. And I think It's a skill you don't see very often from the top guys because they're jumping from power army to power army. So it's not something they have to do. So
you tell me if you think it's wrong. It reminds me almost of like the poker. I'm not a good poker player. Family members who are, and like, the majority of the game is not even playing the card. The majority of the game is playing person, right? And I think that's an element that of 40K that I never really thought about that. You armies on the table, playing army, playing math, playing one particular problem. I really devoted almost no time to paying attention to the other person's emotional state or the other person. Like, if I do something that doesn't hurt me and doesn't advance plan, but it hurts them, not in like a bad way, I don't know, way, but they didn't expect it and they don't on it. That they're not thinking 100%.
Correct.
That's an aspect of the game that, again, I was reasonably successful, and I never really even thought about it.
So I'll give you an example. So the wave serpents can be difficult to kill, but they're certainly killable, right, at 9th. And so in one of my games, what happened was the person did more than enough in their head to kill the wave serpent, and it didn't die. It's on 1 wound. And then so they were just going to throw some random shots into it, bolters or bolter equivalents, to try to pull that 1 wound off. And I lightning fasted on it with 1 wound left. I didn't do that because the math tells me that's the thing to do. I did that because if he fails to kill it with that next unit, it's already in his head and it's going to get even worse, right? And he doesn't kill it, right? He's like, why would you waste a 2 CP? That was stupid. And then it works on like a 20% play, right? He had an 80% chance of killing it still. And to be honest, I would have burnt a reroll on a save if that's what it would have took to keep that thing alive. So I was willing to invest 3 CP into keeping that thing alive just for 1 more unit of shooting into it, because it had already sort of altered his plan, and that completely threw him off his game, right?
And you could see that. Send me a picture of your wave serpent so I can continuously send it to that person all the time. As that wave serpent is his kryptonite, and that person happens to be like one of the people I talk about 40K with a lot.
Yeah, I try not to name names in certain ways because people are here to defend themselves. But those kind of things matter. And they matter in games more than people give them credit for. And again, if you're playing against a robot and you're a robot, they don't matter at all. There's some guys that are very robotic that you're probably not going to tilt at all. And when I say tilt, I definitely do not mean cheating or moving dice or taking wounds off. I'm talking about in-game things you can do to throw people off their game. Anybody who's ever played me knows, like, I coach against myself. I talk everything out. So I think that's probably the thing I need to get better at, is like not coaching against myself and like not reminding people, oh, hey, remember, if you do that, I can do this. And, that's just a failing of me at a competitive level. And I did better. I was actually pretty proud of myself at this event. I was better than I usually am about that. And there are things that a lot of people don't think about. And maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe the key is just to play the most powerful version of the most powerful codex you can get a hold of, and then just play it robotically, and that's how you win. Again, that's boring to me. It's not aesthetic, it's not cinematic, so it's probably not something I'm willing to do. But if people want to do it, that's fine. I mean, we have the team tournament coming up. It looks like I'm playing Mechanicus for the team tournament, because in a team event, I'm more willing to put my own aesthetic pleasures aside and just obviously play to win for the team. I just can't justify bringing Craft Worlds to a 5-man team tournament, because I just be putting my team in the hole. I mean, it's not necessary.
Who's doing Eldar on? Drukhari specific.
Steve's taking Drukhari. Yeah. I would run. So again, I would run my Drukhari, but he already has had most of that list put together, and mine's still probably 2 months away from being done painting. So
I just dropped the big Captain Hammer and told him he's playing Admech.
Whoa, big one.
Yeah. Well, I'm a team player. It is what it is, and I don't want to be captain. So we already have enough crazy people on our team to have one more crazy person. So
it's going to be problematic.
It may be. But dragging back to the tournament, again, I had a blast. I think Tony runs a great event, and something that I don't know if you know about, or the people that are watching this, is he also did a charity auction as well, or a raffle, I guess, and they raised the players there did over $2,000 for their local autism charity, and then Tony matched that. So it was over $4,000 in charity monies that were raised during that event, which was also a great thing. And Tony, Tony's a great guy. He's certainly an ambassador for the sport or esport or e-hobby, whatever it is we do. And despite the AC going down and me literally playing all 6 games inside the 2 worst rooms you could possibly be in, I had a blast. And the tournament was well run. I know you said you want to touch on it. Is it okay if I go into what they did with the pods now? Or
I was just gonna segue into that. I want to make sure we cover that.
Yeah, so it was a really interesting setup. What they did was, because at his main store, they didn't have room for all 68 or whatever people. They went to the game castle, which was like 5 minutes away by car. And so they had 2 different pods going on, basically. I know there was some weird controversy about like selling charity matchups in the first place to get in your pods or whatever. So I'm not going to speak on that because I don't really know what happened. But essentially, they just broke it up into 2 events of basically equal number of people. And then after day 1, they took all the people with the winning records and put them in the top pod or the first pod. And then all the people that had losing records went into the bottom pod. So I actually thought it was interesting because we had a couple of guys that were at the other store in the number 2 pod or bottom pod, whatever you want to call it. And they were a little bit more engaged because they're playing to try to get to the top of their location, right? So it did kind of create a situation where maybe for the mid-table guys or the low-table guys, they had more of a chance to sort of play against closer to their competition all day. So what you didn't have was that yo-yo effect where like, you go 1 and 2 day 1, you win your first game day 2, and then you're back up with the shark, and you're just bouncing up and down. You're able to sort of play more with your skill level. And talking to the guys that played over there, they seemed to have a good time with it. So, and I had a blast at the top pod or whatever you want to call it as well.
In the final ranking, could you get jumped from somebody? Could the bottom pod place higher than the pod?
I don't know. I've heard it both ways on how they're scoring it. Like I haven't seen like final scores, but I know my score was like higher than like all the winner of the final pot or the pot 2. So
yeah, well, you had to be. I think you had to be 1-1-1 or worse to be in that other pod. So I don't. Yeah. Even if you won all 3 of your games, the best you could go would be 4-1-1. And I don't think there was even anybody that was 1-1-1. I think everybody that was in that other pod was 1-2 or worse. So the best they could theoretically do would be 4-2. So there's no way you're going to get to like second place out of that pod.
No, but it's very conceivable.
But in the middle, yeah, like the top, that I don't know. And it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if that were possible, right? Because who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll find some people.
Yeah, so if you're a 10th place guy complaining about 9th place, then you probably shouldn't be in competitive hobbies. It's just, I don't know what to tell you, man. I have very little patience for people like that. If you're the 6th place guy complaining about 5th place, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, so I'll tell you where it could matter. So if you're going like a best faction, right? Like if you're a Gene or cult.
Sure.
Let's say you're like you, right? You've master in the army, you're playing the person, and you go 3-0 the first day. And then you play nothing but hard people the next versus some jump who jumps armies all the time, brings Kari, stuck, goes 1-2, and then lights up a bunch of easy competition on day 2. And then he outranks me, and that costs me a place, which ends up hurting my position for best team. Like that's kind of an edge case.
Yeah, again, so if you went 3-0 day 1 with Gene Circle, you should probably just be happy, I guess. I don't know. Again, I get it because you and I are both math people, but I think one of the places where we differ is that you care about the numbers so much that you forget that people can be douches, and I don't care about you if you're being a douche. So, if you got jumped by a guy out of the second pod, because the thing is, if it was one big pod, the 3-0 guy's day doesn't change. The only argument is that the low guy maybe would have had to play one better guy.
That's not true though, because the 3-0 guy who's then he, like you said, he yo-yo goes back down.
Maybe a little bit, but not if he drops his next 2. He's still gonna be playing the other worst person in the middle of the pack. So if he goes 3-0 day 1 and then goes 0-2, his game 6 is against the same guy he would have played against.
The
only argument would be for the 0-3 guy. And again, you know, I guess, and if it comes down to that, go to an extra tournament. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you know, if your faction score for Gensto or Cole, you know, you got to get one major. So I guess this would be your major. And if the difference between 30th place and 22nd place, I guess, I don't know.
So if you were in a position though, if you were in a position where, say, for like a faction tournament, if you were in a position for a faction tournament, you only needed like a 15th place. Okay.
Sure.
It would actually, if you can jump, if the ranking for the pods overlap, it could be advantageous. In fact, it would be advantageous to you to be the top of the second pod and not make it into the first pod.
Yeah, maybe, but that'd be really hard to plan. And again, if you're putting that much effort into being a douche, then I don't feel bad.
No,
for
I'm
you,
not.
right?
I'm not
Like,
saying people. I'm not saying people are planning. But like, if you look at the other tournaments that use like the pod system, so like Nova does this, the new
Sure.
Games Workshop Open are gonna once you're podded in, your place is only have a range now.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you make it to the top 16, you lose every game, and the worst you're going to get is 16.
16th. Yeah.
If you're in the second pod, the best you're ever going to get is 17.
Right. Yeah. And again, I don't know if at this one you could jump out of your pod. I have no idea. But again, you know, in a 2-pod system, again, if you're talking about 2 positions you maybe gave up because someone jumped you, should either play better or B, sandbag day one. I don't know what to tell you.
Well,
like,
I'm imagining.
I mean, are you there to win, or are you there to come in 14th place with an off-brand army? That's a conversation for a different sort of person than I am.
I suspect it could be a lot more than play. I suspect it could, because if you have somebody at the bottom of the good pot who can't go down anymore, all he's going to do is play people his skill, and somebody who, you know, was at the top of the bottom pod, and all he's going to do is play people equal or worse. I feel like that could make a pretty big difference, it seems to me.
Yeah, maybe, except for the pods were random, right? So the top 16 or 20 out of each pod weren't necessarily like the person who came out of pod 2 as a top player and the person who came out of pod 1 as a top player, they weren't equal, right? I think the eventual standings bore that out. Like the pod
if they
one was
combine
way
the
more
winner,
competitive.
if they combined, the winner of pod 2 would have gotten 12th place.
I don't understand what you're saying.
If they combined the 2 pods' final results, the winner of pod 2 would, like, if we're doing combination, they would finish
12th. What did they
12th
finish?
place.
Do you know what they did finish?
They finished first in their pod.
Okay.
The winner of the pod would have finished 12th and combined.
Correct. So I mean, that's so if you do it the way that like Nova does it, you had like a 60 some person tournament. That person would have gotten 30th,
33rd,
right?
35th,
Yeah,
whatever.
correct. Whereas if you just add up battle points and rank them at the end, he's got 12th. That's actually quite a difference.
No, I don't disagree with that. But if he went, what I'm saying is compare it to a situation where there was no pods. That guy's still going to go 3-3 or what? 4. That was probably a 4-2 score to finish with 12.
4-2.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know that he's going to do appreciably better or worse than that. But again, you're talking about someone who finished in 12th place. So they weren't in contention for top 3. They weren't in contention for prize support. They weren't in contention for. I don't know how many points 12th gives you versus 30th at a major. I don't know.
It's mostly the best in faction
awards and stuff.
Sure. For best in faction, a 12th place could be quite a thing. You know, Herb, one of our,
especially for one of the lesser played factions. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, right. I don't disagree with that, but I guess I'm saying I just don't care that much about it.
Oh, yeah,
like,
that's fair. That's fair if you don't. I think other people might. And so I know a couple of years ago, our teammate Herb was fighting for best renegade.
Corsairs.
Yeah, Corsairs.
Yeah.
And you know, the difference was, you know, something like 70th to 75th place at LVO made the difference for his Corsair award.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, look, I don't disagree. But again, so for an award, if you're telling me that the difference in you winning your faction is a 12th versus 25th place finish at a set 68 person event, I would say you probably shouldn't hang that one on your wall, right? Like, woohoo, I finished 12th in a major and that was the difference. I'm not the kind of person that would hang that one on my wall. So I personally don't have a lot of time for that person's argument, right? Like, here, just print yourself a piece of paper that says you're the best and be done with it. Like, that's all I'm saying. You finished 12th. If that guy finishing 12th pisses off a guy who finished 25th at a major and lost best in faction because he finished 25th, this guy finished 12th because of a pod system. Look, you want to hang that piece of paper? Just print yourself a piece of paper, dude, hang it on the wall, man. Like, you're the best. You finished 25th at a major with Gene Stealer Cult or whatever. Okay. My suspicion is these things work themselves out. Now, in a pandemic shortened season with people not playing as much, it's going to be wacky, right? I would be surprised if anybody really cares about best in faction this year because of how wacky it's been. But maybe people do. Again, my best in faction
people
award.
Take it seriously this year.
Well, people. It took 2 years for me to collect my best in faction awards from FLG. They had to dig it out of storage because it took me so long to get it. So, I understand it's important, but again, for stuff like that, I don't know. Maybe again, I guess if I was the last place finisher out of the top pod, I'd feel like I deserve better than if that guy got pushed down to 40th or whatever. He would have been 33rd and now he's 40th. I don't know. You get mad about it.
The loser of our pod went 2 and 4.
Right.
So the last person in the top pod, 2 and 4.
Yeah, because I'm sure he went 0 and 3 day 2.
Yeah.
Probably.
But do you think he was an actual 2 and 4 caliber player?
No, he might have been a 3 and 3 guy. Yeah, but again, are you going to get better or worse? Right? What is Well,
for me, just a general point. The pod system will, I think, they will exaggerate some people's records and they will suppress other people's records. So just depending on how that shakes.
Yeah. So I guess my point is the people that it's affecting are in the middle, right? So I guess I just don't care about that.
That's not. That's also not always. So in a two pod system, it's not such a big. But if this theory, and we can end. But if there were Nova, which has tons of pods,
right, and they seed them though, right? They attempt to seed them.
They do
spread the good players out.
Well, no. So the first 4 or 5 games or whatever are normal Swiss, right? Your first round's random, and then it's normal Swiss, and then yes, within each pod, it's I believe it's seeded single elimination, if I remember. Right. But that is going to let's say those people actually play all 4 games, right? The top 16 players actually play all 4 of their games. Well, the guy who was 16th seed top bracket, very likely is going to have a 4 and 4 record because he couldn't drop any farther. All he did was play the other Sharks top.
Sure.
That if you don't, we can end. I get that it's not a big deal to you, and I'll fully admit this is kind of probably out of the thousands of people in the very small people. But if you don't lock in the place within the pod, what you're going to get is you're going to get somebody with potentially very inflated place, and somebody potentially with a very deflated.
Yeah. So the bottom of each pod and the top of the pod underneath of it will have the biggest case for argument there.
Correct.
I don't disagree with that. But if you think about the normal Swiss system, is it fair that the 2 best players play to knock each other out every round? That's not exactly fair either, right? You don't see that anywhere else in competition where, in a tournament, the 1 and 2 places play every round. Normally you'd be playing, normally the number 1 team would not be playing the number 2 team every round, right?
Yeah,
they don't reseed. So neither system is perfect, I guess, is my point.
Swiss is common in games where you can't seed, and that's kind of the situation where we're not complete enough data on all of the players to act.
Right. Yeah.
And Swiss is extremely good at finding the one best player.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. Yeah. But I actually think the pod system is good for finding the best, I don't know, at a 70-person event, the best 3 players, maybe 3 or 4, 5. And I think that if you're a serious player and you want to play against better competition, the pod system helps you do that, right? Because you can play up more. So I'm always a play up guy, right? I want to play against the best people. I want to improve my game. I think the pods do a better job of that, especially for someone like me who's playing in a codex that doesn't have the secondaries to score points. I'm not staying on the bottom, right? I'm not submarining with the pod system. Being in the top pod means I'm playing guys who in theory at least have scored better. So I like that it takes away submarining a little bit, because I dislike that as a tactic, and I think it's bad for you long term as a player. Now, maybe at LVO where everything's on the line, you could argue that it's a fair strategy, or it's dangerous because you might not make the elimination round. But again, and then I don't want to sound critical of people who think that like faction is important. My point would be, if faction placing, if that's the difference, 15th to 25th in a 70-person tournament, just go to another major, right, and do better. So then you'll have 2 major scores. So if you have 2 25s and you only got 115, then you're probably going to finish ahead of that person, right? In faction.
He goes the other major too.
Maybe, but maybe because it's not a pod system, he gets dunked, right? And you finished way ahead of him. So if your argument is the only reason he finished better than you is because he had a lucky, easy day one, then that won't happen the second time. So
yeah,
use it as motivation. I'm saying use it as motivation, man. Go out there and do some more work.
You're a very suck it up, don't fix it type person.
Well, I'm a look, you can't change the past guy, right? So look for a way to make it better. That's all. And in this game, dude, if you're going to play this game for any length of time, you're going to feel like you got screwed at some point, some way, right? By a player or a TO or the dice or the tournament, whatever. So it's probably a good learning experience. Get them feelings out of the way early, so that the next time it happens, because it will happen again, it doesn't hurt your feelings as much. They still hurt. Every time I get screwed by anything, it hurts, right? So you got to move past it, I guess, is my point.
All right, I have two additional questions related to the pods. Not. So, question number 1: what do you think of the pods? So we have a big team that lives across many cities, and part of the attraction to going to Sacramento, I know for both Aaron and was that they were going to get to see our friend George, who lives in Sacramento. What do you guys think of just the logistics when you're traveling with people, and especially if you want to see particular people and you're in separate locations? Big deal? Did it ruin it? Did you not even?
I had to do some sweet talking to get us where we needed to be. But yeah, we eventually did day one, get all in the same pod. Unfortunately, we had like 4 teammates in the tournament, and day 2, Dan and I were pod 1, the top pod. Our 2 other players were in the other pod at the other store. Lunch break was long enough so we could still see them at lunch, really, and my round 5 finished early enough, so I went over with another friend to go check out the other pod. So I also saw them between round 5 and 6. So I still got to see the people I wanted to, but the transportation issue could have been problematic if the stores weren't so close. Fortunately, the Uber would have been like $2.
What do you think is the max distance to where it would have started causing problems? Like you said, it was about a 5-minute drive. Would like a 15-minute drive have caused problems?
So I guess it would depend on what you're trying to do. So they did 3-hour rounds. They did an hour for lunch. So we had plenty of time. An extra 10 minutes, an extra 5 minutes each way wouldn't have affected it any. And I don't know how much you see your teammates like between rounds to hang out. Really, not a ton. So again, if they're within 10 minutes of each other, I wouldn't think it'd be a problem. It presented some unique sort of like back and forth chatter too that was kind of neat, at least within our team. I will say it would have been tough. Like you said, if this was 4 pods at 4 different locations, makes it harder for a team like us to send 4 guys to it. Because what are the chances that 1 or 2 of your teammates are going to end up by themselves, right, in a pod? And that would be both a competitive disadvantage and disadvantage to your fun. So I think outside of the 2 locations, I don't know that you want to go any more than 2 locations. And for traveling purposes, I think more than 2 would basically prohibit you from traveling unless you were going to bring, if we brought 10 guys, then it would be fine. Just from a logistics point of view, trying to get everybody to the right pod with limited vehicles, especially right now with them having no rental cars. I was lucky I was able to get a car, and then George drove up. So we had 2 cars. And, worst case, if George and I end up in the same pod, I just give the rental to one of the other guys going to the other pod. But so transportation didn't turn out to be a problem. But it could have been, if 3 of us in both cars end up in one pod and one guy ends up by himself, that would have been a bummer. But, as a team, we do a good job of going out to dinner and all that stuff. I think that's where most of your team time is anyway. So
fair enough. One more question.
Like someone who doesn't finish their games in an hour and a half.
Yeah. So that would be if we're the time that you do see your teammates in between rounds is when the game's a blowout, wraps up really quickly, and you just go park by your buddy, for that. Opportunities to do that might be lower.
Yeah, which isn't always a bad thing, because one of our teammates came into watch my game 6 and coached for my opponent. So
can't confirm
that too.
So other question related to the pod. Part of the reason that the pods I think are really fascinating. This isn't really even about pods. It's about the 2 stores. It seems to solve a fairly serious problem that TOs have, which is finding a location where it's the physical space to host 30 to 50 tables. Right, getting a venue that large costs thousands of dollars, huge financial investment. Do you guys think that this double store, right, like pods, is this a viable way forward to make GTs cheaper and easier for TOs to run?
Aaron, you're the TO.
I wouldn't go into it, I don't think. It can create some interesting situations with players and teams traveling together, like we discussed. Might some frustrations, possibly some complaints. It might decline future turnout. I don't know.
Yeah, so I kind of had the opposite. I would say, as a non-TO, I thought the TOs at this event did a good job. And I think especially day 2, it sort of allowed the head TO to spend essentially his whole day at the top tables and again, logistically. I think if your options were, and it was the case with this event, was that he had more local interest than he had space, right? So going to the second pod allowed him to fill the rest of his local interest and then go out and get some small groups of people to come in travel-wise. We were the only people that came in from out of state, I think, right? Maybe
one guy that was the case, yeah. Yeah,
I think one guy from Texas, but had family there or something. So I think the vast majority of people were local. So I think for a local event, it works really well. Now, if you're trying to do a draw from multiple states event, then that would make it more tricky for sure. But if we were trying to run a local tournament here and we had a 36-person event set up and we had 50 local players, I think it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility to have it at a second location. Again, you have to have double the TOs, sort of, I guess. It depends on how you look at your rules questions and whatnot. But again, I think it worked well because the vast majority of the people there were locals. So,
all right. Well, we've been going about an hour. I got two final questions for both of you. So, for people who are listening and considering going to the Hammerhead next, so question number 1: if you are within driving distance, so you're local or you can get there with a car, is this a tournament that you should go to next?
100% you should, yeah. If you can get a ticket. Yeah,
right.
You absolutely should.
I enjoyed myself. The big issue would have to be the heat, but it sounds like they've got that fixed since it was just an inconvenient weekend that their AC decided to crap out.
So I think I found my secret weapon whenever you guys come over and play. I'm just going to turn my humidifier.
Yeah.
I'll tilt all of you because I don't care about
that'll work. To be fair, it only worked on me one game. So you might have missed your window of opportunity there. So I think I'm through it now mentally. I figured it out. So you might have missed your chance there, Matt. Could have made it like a Missouri summer, and you messed it up.
It's already hot in your room anyway.
It is hot.
already
It's dry though. It's kind of
dry,
kind of.
like
All right.
home.
All right. So if you can drive your local, get there. If somebody's considering of flying, is this an event worth flying? That's how you have to.
I would say yes, given the amount of prize support he put down on, for everybody. And that prize support got spread out really good, and with the charity auction and everything. If you're going to go as like a small team, like we did, I would definitely talk to Tony or whoever's organizing it to make sure you can at least get like all in the same pod. If they do pods again, make sure you can just get in the same pod for one day. The nice thing is that there was proximate lodging. Like where we stayed was literally 90 seconds from one pod, and again 5 minutes from the other pod. So, and it was very reasonably priced. So, like the lodging situation there is good. Getting out of the airport, Sacramento's not the best airport, so just plan that. But
it wasn't awful.
No, it wasn't terrible. Yeah.
I think it was more the airplanes that were the issue.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't any worse. So we get spoiled because we live in Phoenix, right? Sky Harbor is amazing. That's probably the biggest problem. I mean, those guys got out Sunday night, no problem. My plane was delayed 10 hours or whatever on Monday, which sucked. But
ours was delayed like an hour.
Yeah, that's an airline problem though, right? That's not the airport. But the airport wasn't. Getting out of the airport where it is, and it's California, right? So the highway situation's not great. But once you got to your hotel, there's plenty of lodging very proximate to the store, and then getting around Sacramento was very fast. There was no problems getting around Sacramento. So,
awesome. Well, guys, any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to say before we call it for today?
Suns and 4.
I agree. I'll go with that. I'll also say, again, thanks to Tony for running that event, and big ups on all the charity money we raised for a charity that a lot of us, feel is a very important charity. So,
I appreciate it.
What was the charity? Do you remember?
It was their local autism research chapter, or research or therapy. I can't remember which. It's the Table War guys, the charity that they front all the time for autism.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, everybody. Well, we're going to go ahead and end it there for today. I just want to say thank you all for watching. If you have enjoyed this, you can always subscribe, like, comment below. That's the best way, honestly, that you can support the show. It helps us move up in the algorithm. Other people discover what we're doing. We're going to have a lot more of these coming. I know our team, we were kind of slow to travel because of COVID, but I think that's mostly over with. I've got, personally, I think, 4 GTs before the end of the year that I'm going to. We're going to do. We got a lot of tournaments coming and a lot of coverage. So everybody look forward to that. That's all that I have to say. So thank you one more time. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.